Here tonight would be a good night. It's a school to learn Hilchos Fischel, and it's outside. Okay. So the story goes that a man is walking down the street. It's his honeymoon, and they pass by a store that sells mink coats, and his wife of 2-3 days says, "Oh, if only." You know, if only. He says, no problem. He picks up a brick, throws it through the window, crash, puts his hand in, takes out the coat, and he gives it to her. They walk a little bit weiter. They pass Tiffany. She says, "Oh, that diamond necklace. Oh, I don't want to sound like a no problem." Picks up another brick, throws it through the window, crash, there's some alarms ringing. He quickly slips it into his fingers and gives it to her, and they continue going. And they turn the corner and they pass a very expensive shoe shop. She goes, "Oh, those shoes." He goes, "1 second. What do you think? I'm made of bricks," he says. "How much do you think I can continue to do for you?" The Rabbi Shalom gives us what we need. We have in our heart the bricks, we have in our heart the stones, we have in our heart whatever it takes really to be able to survive. And the Rebbeinu Shalom gives it to us because we have to face challenges and nisyonos. I'll never forget one of the few times, I wasn't a terrible bacher, but sometimes I just had this urge to say a line back to the Rabbi, and it just went flashing me my line. I remember once when I was 15 years old, I was sent to the principal. That's because my Rabbi gave a shiur about bizyonis. He gave a shiur about bizyonis, and the Rabbi was saying that to receive embarrassment is so important. It's such a kapara. And then he finished off like saying, and if we had seichel, we would go out and pay people to embarrass us. So I picked up my hand and said, "Rabbi, I'll do it for free." And that got me sent to the principal. You know, Klal Yisrael comes into Mitzrayim, and they have the... Just lower it up, Uncle Yaakov. Yeah, just move a little closer. We got it. And Klal Yisrael comes into Mitzrayim, and they're kings. Yosef Atzadik is the king, can't have it any better than that. All of the Mitzrayim are so nice, so appreciative. The Klal Yisrael, you made us a world power! You made us an economic power, a world power, and Paro is so. And Yaakov Avinu brought the end of the drought, and because of his bracha, the Nilus came flowing over, and the Yidden were getting very comfortable in Gullus. As a matter of fact, they couldn't have had it any better. And suddenly things changed. And it changed so fast. They didn't chap how quickly it changed. It's like when you look out the window and you say, when did it get dark? It got dark so quickly. So all of a sudden, the Yaakov Melech Chadash, Yades Yosef. Where are Yosef's children? What Yosef? Who Yosef? I never heard of Yosef. No, they don't understand. The whole Nilus that comes and gives you bracha, that's Yaakov Avinu's bracha. Who's Yaakov? Never heard of him. What are you talking about? That's me. That's me, Paroi. I'm the one. It's because of me. And all of a sudden, you're a threat to us, and all of a sudden they get different kinds of looks. And before you know it, they're trying to look patriotic, and they're going to join all the forces to rebuild peace in Ramses, and then suddenly they're enslaved, and they're facing unbelievable Xeros, and their babies are being thrown into the water. And this is a certain kind of galus, which is also a certain kind of phase that we go through in life. You know, it's one thing to be thrown into darkness, to be thrown into a dark pit. In a sense, even harder than that is when your own life becomes a dark pit around you. What happened? And a person is comfortable, he's comfortable with his home, he's comfortable with his family, comfortable with his job, and suddenly he finds himself terribly isolated as the phases of life goes on and things change. And you wonder, when did this happen? How did my life turn into such a gullus? And to be able to understand that this is also a hashgacha, that sometimes the Kadosh Baruch Hu throws let's put it the right way. Sometimes the Hashgacha understands that we have to be thrown into a dungeon, and sometimes the dungeon is created around us. And in both cases, the Rebbeinu Hashem does give us the wherewithal to be able to deal with it. But it's a much harder reality when the dungeon turns around us. When suddenly a person's home becomes a difficult place to be because circumstances, for whatever reason, change. Or relationships that you were so comfortable with and were going so well because of certain incidents that may have taken place, and suddenly it's strained, and it goes worse than being strained. It's ripped apart, and the pain is so much greater. And to see that this is also a hashgacha, and that I have the nisyonis, and I can get through this aspect of life, that requires, in a sense, a greater amount of mesiras nefesh. To have to face, it's a much harder reality to face. The very room that I'm in became dark. Well, they say these 4 college students show up, and they say to their professor, sorry, we're late. Professor says, I don't let people into class late, and you cannot take the test anymore. We're going to flunk the grade! It's not our fault. We got together. We left plenty of time. We had a flat. You had a flat? Oh, you had a flat. You didn't tell me that. No problem. You can all retake the test. Sure. He takes the 4 students. He puts them into 4 separate rooms. He says, I'm going to give you, though, one question before you begin the test. No problem. And they're sitting in the 4 separate rooms, and they look at the one question. Write which one of the 4 tires was flat. Yes. Yeah. I remember, it wasn't me, but it was someone else when I was in yeshiva. A lot of things happened to me when I was in yeshiva. So this kid was perpetually late. And one day I happened to be in the principal's office. I don't remember it was that day that I gave the B'zionis for free or a different day. And the principal asked this young man, why are you late? So he said that my father drove me and we had a flat. Uh-huh. So he picked up the phone and he called the father. He said, do you have a flat today? So the father said, how did you know? Anyway, he says, maybe we should get back on time. It should be okay. He hangs up the phone. He says to the boy, why did you lie to me? He goes, blah, 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 blah. He says, your father had a flat on the way back, not on the way coming. He goes to the principal, how did you know? He says, first of all, your father asked me, how did you know? If he had the flat on the way coming, so why would he ask, how would you know? He would know. You told me. And second of all, when I said to your father, did you have a flat? I saw your face turn red. And then when you heard your father say, yeah, how did you know? I saw that look on your face of surprise, like smiling. Whoa! He said, you gave yourself away. Okay? In Nevardik, there was my father's kind of bracha told me this. He learned in Nevardik. There was a candle that they kept near the Aron Kodesh. I don't know if it was mamish in a case, but it was like in a museum kind of a case with a plaque next to it. I don't know if the mamish was a plaque, but it was something along those lines. My plaque. It was once by a dinner. It was a Sila Shemaisid. It was very rich in the language of Yiddish. Not so good in the English. And they were honoring a lawyer, poor guy. And they called him up and they said, and now, he takes out this thing, they hold it up to the cameras. Now we are going to give Mr. So-and-so his plague. Here. He looked at me, he said, what are they giving me? He meant plaque. Oh, plaque. Oh, okay. All right, so I don't know if there was a plaque or not in Nevardik, but next to the Baal Tefillah, there was a burnt-out candle, and that was called the Ner B'Tachin. Why was it called the Ner B'Tachin? Because the Altaf in Nevardik, how old do you have to be to become the Altaf? I don't know, the Altaf in Slovakia. I'm not sure exactly what the cutoff age is, but the Altaf in Nevardik, who, as we've discussed on previous occasions, was an unbelievably courageous person and in the most amazing way in the most difficult times, and never took no for an answer. And the word impossible did not exist in his dictionary. Right? That included making yeshivas during World War I and building those yeshivas by having his talmidim hold on to the back of trains as they went from station to station. So the Altaf in Nevardik, he used to do his badadis. Right? He would go off alone to talk to Hashem and learn and sever himself from the world. So at one point he found this old hunter's shack that the hunters or wood choppers made, and they left it in the woods, and for him that was perfect. And he had a candle, and he's sitting and learning, and the night just started. It was a freezing night, and the candle, huff puff, went out. And here he is all alone in the woods. So his initial reaction was, Rabbanu Shalom, I need a candle. But then he said no, because he worked on the inyan of Bchochmo without ishtadlus, and he felt that it was a time that was necessary. So the Altaf in the Vardik said, the Rabbanu Shalom knows I need a candle. That's all. He just continued shaking back and forth. And there's a couple of different versions to the story, but somehow someone knocked on the door and gave him a burning candle. Where, what, when? Was it Eliyahu Navi? Was it someone else? No one knew. But something, okay, Uncle Yankel?
No, okay.
You all right? Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Someone knocked on the door and gave him a burning candle. And he took that candle. He said, the Rebbe knows it's a dark, freezing night. I need a candle. I didn't even ask for it. If you realize, of course the Rebbe is going to give it to me. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to give to me what I need. What's the question? So that became a symbol. He took the candle home. It became a symbol as the Ner B'Tachon, and it was next to the Yom. Then as soon as they put it up next to the Amid, right afterwards there was a terrible fire in the Vardik. In those days, fires were very commonplace. Ghetto wooden houses piled next to each other, and the Talmidim did whatever they could to try to save the Sifrei Torah. And Baruch Hashem, the wind changed direction the last minute. The Beis HaMedrash was saved, and there was no water damage, because there was no water. There was no fire damage, and the only thing that happened was, because of the heat, the candle had completely melted, and it was now just a splosh of liquid on the floor. It was non-existent. So the Altaf in the Vardik, this I heard from my father, explained why this happened to the candle. He said the fact that he put it away to show in such a public place as a Ner of B'Tachon was a lack of B'Tachon. Because if you really have B'Tachon, there's no Chiddush that the Kadosh Baruch Hu brought on a candle. The fact that you're making a museum piece out of it, wow, look at this, that shows, that's a Chiddush. What's the Chiddush? If you have B'Tachon, there shouldn't be a Chiddush. So the Rabbi Yaakov Galinsky says that when the Panovich Rav heard this story, he says, I didn't need a Ner B'Tachon. I didn't need one. But let me tell you my story. I became Rav in Panovich. I was a young man. And I started a boys' school in one house at one end of the woods, and a girls' school in another house at another end of the woods, and a koil and everything else. And at one point we realized it was very hard to function. So I was looking to buy a plot of land, which the Panovich Rav was very good with. I mean, everyone could do it, but he was good by doing it even without money. The Panovich Rav bought a plot of land to build his koilul, build his yeshivas, build his maizdas, and build everything else that has to be built. And he negotiated with the local squire, who was the Poritz, and the Poritz said that he wants 100,000 ruble for the plot of land, and only on the condition that he gets 25,000 as a deposit, and it has to be cold cash or cold rubles. And he was desperate to come up with the 25,000. He had no clue where he was going to get the other 75 from. And the Panovich Rav had the money from his own personal dowry. In other words, the money from his own nadan. So he said, let me take that money. And he spoke to his wife. He said, listen, this is Torah. This is the future. This is the continuity of generations. It's not going to exist. We have to be Meisanevish ourselves. So she said to him, but if you don't come up with the other 75,000, you have neither the property, and you also don't have the money. He said, the Yitzhar always has cheshbonos, why not to do it? Let's jump in. And they did it. They jumped in and they did it. And he put down the 25,000. He figured he'll be able to raise the money, and they gave him 3 weeks to raise the other 75,000. And he went to some people. They said, listen, we don't have money right now, we'll give you advice. Satmar Rebbe once said that he has two kinds of chassidim. He has those that give money and they ask for advice. He has those that give advice and ask for money. Usually goes hand in hand, in that the periods and commas in that place. So there were those who promised advice. There were those who told the Panovich Rav that in a half a year he thinks he has money coming in. He said, you don't understand, I put my whole dowry, I put everything up on the line. He said, all right, maybe in a little bit less than a half a year. Somebody else said, my money is all invested and tied up. And someone else said, I only would have come yesterday. And you could just imagine what went on. Someone said, what? You want me to give money for your yeshivas? No, I have a brother who's starving to death and he has 15 kids. He says, you help him? No, so I'm sure I'm not going to help you, right? Anyway, so the bottom line is, the clock is running out. And now there's a week left, half a week left, and a day left. And Sunday is the deadline. And he's coming into Shabbos. You can imagine things a little... and he writes that he was graced with the appearance of his shver and shviger for Shabbos, his father-in-law and mother-in-law, who very encouragingly told him, "You took the whole nut and we put that money away. We just bought our daughter. You gave it away to something." And right, they were a little emotional about it. Right, what do you're young Rav, and this went on the entire Shabbos, and then Matzai Shabbos, where now there's like almost no time left. He decided that things are a little bit hot at home. Maybe he'll go off to the Beis Medrash. Panovich Rav said he walked into the Beis Medrash. He could lose his home, could lose his naden, lose his support. He was not going to lose his mother-in-law. She was reminded for the rest of his life that he threw away the naden for nothing. And he realized, the truth is you can't blame them, given the situation. They were a little bit uptight. And he said he never felt so lost in his life. Never felt so lost. He said he decided that he has to just remove himself from this whole situation. He said he took out a Gemara and he started to learn the way he never ever learned before. He said he asked the kasha, he came up with a teretz, and that teretz for him for a bunch of kashas. He said felt such a simcha in his life that he never ever felt before. Mind you, this is the Panovich Rav who wrote about himself. Thank you very much. Uncle T? No. Sure? Okay, shkach. The Panovich Rav wrote about himself. He wrote about himself that he was once writing a star. He had a whole star for the selling of chometz. Worked out the various intricacies and complications in halacha. And this was during World War I. The soldiers, or World War II, I don't know, whatever, one of the world wars. And the soldiers burst in, they schlepped him out, they put him up against the wall, and they said, "There's the spy, the spy." He said they told him to turn around and face the wall. He did a quick vidui, the abridged version, didn't have time for much. And he said they started to shoot around him, and they warned him, "Next time you spy, you're dead." And then the commander came along and said, "He's not the spy, it's someone else." So that's it. So he walked into his house with a bunch of bullet holes making his image around. He said he sat down and he continued writing the nusach of the shtar. So this is the Panovich Rav. But now he's much younger now, and the world came to an end. And what happens now? Like, Hashem, where are you? He said he opened up the Gemara. He said it was him and the Gemara. He said he learned till 2:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And he never felt such a simcha in his life. He said whatever it was going to be is going to be. He closed the Gemara, kissed it, he had his chidushim, and he started on his way home. He presumed by now that his in-laws were getting their sleep, Matzah Shabbos, so things will be somewhat more quiet, or perhaps they had left. And he comes, you see the lights are still on in his house. He goes, "Okay." And he walks in the hallway. There's two of the town's gevirim standing there, two of the rich people in town. And they say that we're about to do a shidduch, we're about to drink a l'chaim. He says, "Mazel tov, you're coming to call me to the Vart at 2:30 in the morning." They said, "No." They want to put money in escrow. And they have 75,000 ruble they want to put into escrow. That the Rav should hold it for them, and that should be support for the son-in-law. So he said, "Listen, I'm not holding money. I don't have a safe." He said, "If you're going to give me 6 months that I could use the money, in the interim, I'll take responsibility for it." They said, "Fine, we're not going to ask it for you for 6 months. You can take the money." So suffice to say, he took the money, and just before sun up or sun down, as the sellers of the property were about to lick their fingers and pump on the 25,000 that they got, plus the property, they were not very happy to see the Panovich Rav come in the 12th hour, and just as the gate was about to close, and sneak underneath as it was closing, and he gave them the 75,000. He says he gave them the 75,000, he purchased the property, he turned around, and by the time he got back home, the two gevirim were standing there, no shidduch. They had some kind of disagreement. They said the shidduch, no shidduch, it's over. He said, "We want the naden back." He said, "You told me 6 months." So they said, "Okay, we told you so, 6 months." So he has 6 months. Okay, how he got it 6 months later, I don't know. But if you want to know, that was just the training ground for the Panovich Rav to build the Panovich Yeshiva. As everyone said, Rommel was coming into Eretz Yisrael. That's when he bought Panovich. Rommel was coming into Eretz Yisrael. It was going to be the end. They were going to build in gas chambers. People were going to commit suicide. That's it. The Germans are coming in. Panovich Rav was in the hospital, and they were chayshish that he had a certain growth they diagnosed him with. which was turned out to be it was a scare. But during that time, he went out and negotiated the purchase for Panovich. So if you want to know how a person can train himself, one should not be tested. So Lamaisa, life changes. We look out the window and we wonder, how did it get dark? What happened? Right? People the least likely not to be sensitive to me suddenly are insensitive to me. Because circumstances change. As circumstances change, people change. And I once heard that in the course of our lives, everything that is dear to us at one point is going to threaten us. Because the Rabbi has to show us on each level that we need him. You can't rely on anyone. I once read this. There was a Russian Army Olympic hockey team. That was the Army team that no one could beat them, with the exception of the Philadelphia Flyers, but we're not going to get into that in this particular sheet. Every single team they beat. And they had, one of their minhagim was that they were told if you see the goalie was sleeping, they would take a shot at their own goal. Not a super strong shot, but enough so that the goalie knew he can't trust anybody. That even his own teammates. Right, at their own goalie, right. So in other words, there's a time in our life where I think the Rebbeinu Shalom shows us, Al tiftechu b'vnei adam. And there are times in our life there are people who trust us, and we say foolish things. It's, I can't believe I hurt that person. I can't believe I said such an insensitive thing to that person. I just can't believe it. Because what happens is that Kadosh Baruch Hu has to show us that there's no person, there's no place, there's no money, that it's only the Rebbeinu Shalom that guarantees us who we are. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, the Matzah of Klal Yisrael is bad. I mean, their Amunah is shocked. They are depressed. They are suffering. They see no hope. They see no light at the end of the tunnel. So who do I tell them is sending me? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Eka asher eka, life will go on. Eka, if a Yid says life is going to go on, I'm going to deal with this, then asher eka, then I'm going to be there for it. But life has to be able to go on. Chavetz Chaim taich to Mokem asher ata oimid olav admas kodesh, the land that you're standing on is holy land. He says, the world caved in on me. That's it, I'm finished. It's all over. No. If only I was someplace else, and if only 2 years ago I made a different decision, and if only I did a different shidduch, and if only. Hamakim asha'ata oim asha'ata oimed olav. The land you are standing on right now, with the people that you are with your nisyanis, your challenges, your worries, your concerns. That is Admas Kodesh. No if, what, could have, should have, would have. Chavetz Chaim used to say that there are 3 things a person should treat each day with. Number 1, that this is the only day of my life. There's no other day in my life. This is the first and last day of my life. Second, when you sit down to a Blat Gemara, this is the only Blat Gemara in Shas. The only Blat Gemara in Shas. And number 3, that you should consider yourself a Ben Yochid to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking to see how his Ben Yochid is going to act. Can't rely on anyone else. The Ramban calls the whole Sefer Shemot Sefer HaGeula. But the first psukim of Shemot, there's no Geula yet. It's Saris, it's bondage, it's slavery. Because that slavery is Geula. So the Chavetz Chaim in World War I had to run away from Radin. One day you have a nice, beautiful, simple little yeshiva in a simple, little, peaceful town. And the whole world is peaceful, and you don't hear from trains and buses and cars, and everything is so sweet. Everything is so nice. So we wouldn't be able to get used to it. Yid told me this week, a Chashuv Rav. He grew up in the Lower East Side, right underneath the FDR Drive and the Williamsburg Bridge. And when he went to Lakewood to learn, it was very quiet then. He said he couldn't take the quiet. He was going out of his mind. He said, where are those buses? Where are those garbage trucks? Where's the rumbling of the train? Needs it. Baruch Hashem said he had the base medrash afterwards. So imagine you have Radin, you have the simple Chavetz Chaim, beautiful, beautiful, simple town, and all of a sudden World War I is coming, the Bolsheviks, the Menshevik stuff, can't even keep up with it, it's so complicated, and the Chavetz Chaim has to run for his life. And the yeshiva splits up, and he runs for his life, and he's someplace in a remote town, and Chavetz Chaim, what does he do? He begins to help the other refugee families, that's what he does. And they come into a shul, in this remote town, they're there for Shabbos, and there's a Chashuv Yid, very Chashuv Yid, also ran away, and he comes into the shul, so he walks up front. The Chavetz Chaim sits all the way in the back, by the Orech table. And the Chavetz Chaim walks up to this Rav, whatever is Rav, he says, what do you have to sit in front for? You don't know the politics in this shul, you don't know whose place you're taking, come sit by the Orech table. So he walks back with the Chavetz Chaim, they're sitting by the Orech table. And then it comes times for Shalashudis, so the Chavetz Chaim is there with his son. He tells this Rav, come to me for Shalashudis. I don't think they had strawberry and cream, but come for Shalashudis. They're on the way for Shalashudis. All of a sudden, boom! Shots in the air, screaming, yelling, people terrorized, running in all different directions. The Mensheviks lost and the Bolsheviks won. They took over the town, red flags flying high. Chavetz Chaim is gelasin, peaceful. He's on his way to Shalashudis. Each Shalashudis, you're saved from all the L'chemes Goy Gemagoi. And there's this huge explosion as they rip open the prison of where they kept the Bolshevik prisoners. And they're all out. And this Rav says to the Chavetz Chaim, Rav, he said, what's the problem? Who's coming? And who was coming, unfortunately, was a man by the name of Ruvain. Now he had a Russian name. And this Reuven was from the big Bolshevik, big Hasidim of Stalin, Lenin, whoever was the head at that time. And they didn't want to have anything to do with him. And after Chavetz Chaim, Chavetz Chaim called him over. Says to him, Reuven, maybe you want to join me for Shalashudis? And it turned out Reuven hadn't eaten for a while, so he said, okay. And they came in and they're tsittering around this table, the Chavetz Chaim's son and this other Rav. And then they wash, and then in the middle of the Shalashudis, the Chavetz Chaim, maybe after they bench, the Chavetz Chaim says to the other two, the Rav and his son, if they can go out, he wants to talk to his friend Ruvain for a while. They walk out and they're staring at each other. Here's the Chelik of Chavetz Chaim, and here's this person who's going around, with a shotgun, touting apikarsis, ready to kill and destroy a country, or build a country, depending on which side of the red flag you were. And the Chavetz Chaim says to him, Ruvain. It says, where was the Eitz HaChaim? It was B'toich Hagan. Where was the Eitz HaChaim? It was in the middle of the circle. Why is it in the middle? It's to show you that as much as a Yid wants to run away from Olam Haba, you can't run away from Olam Haba. There's only so far you can go until the perimeter. And eventually, the Rebbeinu Shalom shakes things in such a way that you become closer to the circle. He says, now that the Bolsheviks took over, I'm going to leave and head back to Radin. But I want to tell you that the whole time I was here, I provided bread for 42 families. He says, Ruvain at Shalashudis, we're going to talk now about the people you killed. We're going to talk now about the yeshivas that you closed. We're going to talk now about the people that were sent to Siberia, about who you threatened. Mm-hmm. I want to tell you that you can't run away from this Eitz HaChaim that's in the middle of the circle. It's B'toich Hagan. And the Rebbeinu Shalom must love you, because he knows I'm leaving, and someone has to take over the achrayas of the bread for these 42 families. So apparently the Rebbeinu Shalom shook things so that you can reach out now and take the Eitz HaChaim. Don't miss the opportunity. And that was the end of the conversation. This Ruvain, with great risk to his own life, supported the 42 families for a tremendous duration of time. In our lives, sometimes we're shaken. We're overwhelmed by expectations. We're overwhelmed by a world that's changing very fast. And we're repositioned. But remember, as much as we're repositioned, A, we're never out of the circle, and B, we can't run away from our achrayus. We can't run away from our responsibility. I read a fascinating study. Uncle Yankel, I don't know. I'm sorry. No, no, you could sleep. I just wanted to say something. I didn't mean to wake you. Chas v'shalom. I'm sorry. You might call me?
As soon as I hear the Chavetz Chaim.
Okay. So, I wanted to ask you if you remember this.
I got stories that I remember.
Because I think you and me are the only ones that are going to remember this. I don't see too many white beards over here. In my days, when you went to fill up on gas, remember this? Most of the time, where were the pumps? What store was behind? There was a mechanic. Right. There wasn't stores like today. Mm-hmm. There we go. Don't want people to reveal our age over here. How much was the gas? Right. Never mind the gas was the... How much?
29 cents.
29 cents. There you go. So in the days that gas were 29 cents a gallon, right? And in those days, you used $50 to buy a car. I know, because I still have when I still have it. So, right. I'm still paying the payments. Put down my nod first. That's what I did in a waiting. So, you go back to 30 years ago. For those of you who remember, there weren't convenience stores. Remember, every mechanic almost had gas pumps. And you pulled into a gas pump, there was a mechanic. There were cars on a lift. Now today, it's almost non-existent. Mechanics don't have gas pumps. What is in the area of the gas pump? There's convenience stores. You buy lotteries, you buy overnight cookles, depending where the gas station is. But newspapers that you should not be looking at, or maps, whatever, cigarette lighters, and the variety of different things that are in a cans of drinks, whatever. So when did this change? So I read a report that 90% of gas pumps are in front of convenience stores, whereas 30 years ago, 90% of gas pumps were in front of mechanics. So I was thinking it's because the marketing changed, because the mindset of people changed. It used to be when you filled up on gas, you wanted to check, if your car was okay. You wanted to check the fluids. You had a car. A car wasn't something you leased and got rid of every 6 months. It wasn't a chad pami kind of a thing or a disposable thing. It was, we had a different mindset. There was an appreciation for things. And you also knew that when you pulled to fill up on gas, you also had to recheck yourself. Do I have to make myself better? Maybe is my car ready for this environment? Are my tires safe for this road? We don't think that way anymore. We don't think. You pull to the gas, you pump the gas, and go come out with a Coca-Cola. That's it. There's no thinking to try to make yourself better. The mindset of people change. Just like learning Daf Yomi. So the Gemara, a whole period, we went away from it, it comes back to it, with the Shearim of how much something has to be in order to carry on Shabbos. How big does something have to be to carry on Shabbos? So the Gemara lists dozens and dozens of things. And the Gemara says each little trinket, what they used it for. Grasshoppers, what they used for. Because they had an appreciation for every little thing in life. Things were very, very different than it is now. I read someplace that BMW is now going into the business of baby carriages. There's going to be BMW baby carriages. Can you imagine that? Going into a dealer to get a baby carriage. Right? Which is going to, what's going to happen? In Borough Park, it's going to be Honda Odyssey baby carriages all over the place. I don't know what Borough Park has with Honda Odysseys. I tell you this once. I was in the country, and I'm serious. And this fellow pulls in. He wasn't Jewish, and a nice man. He comes out. He goes, "Where is this a Honda Odyssey dealer? Like, where is it? No, this is a parking lot of Yankel's bungalow colony." Why are they? Well, he shrugs. He leaves. Okay. I guess they're going to come out soon with Astro baby carriages. I don't know. They're good. They still have tape recorders. They don't have. You're going to have a 10,000 mile minimum. Then you have to start paying if you push the carriage anymore. A baby carriage used to be a baby carriage. It wasn't a mark of my... a car today is a mark of a person's... did he make it in life? It wasn't the means of getting you from one place to the other. So what do you need a mechanic for? You need a mechanic. I told you about good old Al in White Lake. But he did a wheel alignment like no one else did. You know how he did a wheel alignment? Never mind computerized, nothing. He used to tie 2 flashlights to the 2 front tires. I'm serious. And he had 2 holes circled on the wall. And he would get under the car and position the tires until the light beamed right into the hole. That was a wheel alignment. That was perfect. Al also used to fix school buses. Right. He was the one that, when they had a problem, remember one of the camps, that it didn't shift from 2nd to 3rd gear. So he said that's only at 45 miles an hour. So he had the driver drive it with the hood open, and he was standing, holding on to the outside, steering into the engine as it reached 45 miles an hour, because he wanted to see how it shifted. Never mind that the driver couldn't see where he was going, because the hood was up. The Al was telling him, right, on the left. No, there's a bridge there, no, left, right. There's a bus there. A bus not there anymore, no. There was an appreciation for things. Very different. So you daven Mariv tonight, I hope. Or you're going to daven Mariv. And you said, is there anyone? So you said, thank you very much. Bye-bye. So you said, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, as you would start davening Mariv. And you said, Asher b'dvarei Mariv haravim. And you said, Bchochmo, with wisdom, Posaiach Shearim, you open up the gateways. They say once there was this Yid, he passed away. So they called in a rough to give a hesped. They said he was a pickpocket and a ganef his whole life. Say something nice about him. His family is here. He goes, Rabbi Eichel, Ab ein kann sagen Bchochmo, Posaiach Shearim. Wisdom, he opened locks.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they found him, right? Then they opened up the door and he wasn't there, right? Okay. There's this ganef, he told someone, how did you marry off your daughter? He said, I saved up, pruta at a time. He says, What stopped you from, how did you keep saving up? You didn't use the money in the interim? He said, I put it into a metal box. I knew I can't open it. He goes, my problem was that there was no metal box that I can't open. He says, I had no way of saving money. So we say every night, Bchochmo, Posaiach, Shearim. You know why? Because our life changes. We would love to believe that life is going to be exactly the way it is. We'd love to believe that our friends are going to be friends, they're not going to be challenges, our family members are going to be family members, loyalty is loyalty, that we're not going to change, they're not going to change. We'd love to think that our job is a job, and that our home is our home, and our apartment is our apartment. And what we're saying is, Asher b'dvara ma'arav haravim. The Rebbeinu Shalom changes things. The Rebbeinu Shalom has the sunset that we look outside and we see sometimes it's a different world. But I once heard a taich, Asher b'dvara. Asher, lashon of fortunate. How fortunate is the person? B'dvara. Who knows that when things change in your life, it's a gzeirim and a shemayim. Because if you believe that ma'arav from a lashon of sweet, arev and sweet, ma'arav haravim, then the evenings are sweet. Then you know that the Rabbi Shalom is repositioning you. Perhaps in that circle you should be closer to the Eitz HaChaim. And even though it looks like new doors are being opened up and you're being pushed through it, but Bchochmo Posaiach Shearim. You know, we're not on the Madreg of the Altaf and the Vardik, that we can't go out there. I mean, you could, but I don't know if you're going to get your candles. And we're not on the Madreg of the Panovich Arav, perhaps to take our home and our Nadan and invest it to build a yeshiva. But as relationships evolve and as we have the ups and downs in our life, we're pushed into new situations. We may not pick what the Panovich Arav was on the Madrega to pick, but it happens to us. We're pushed into different situations. You know, we know the computer age, right, Uncle Yankel? It drives us nuts, right? Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're good at it, I know. For me, I can't. My kids have to come and tell me.
Computers are responding to me, but I don't know how they do it.
Right. Right. My children were laughing at me. I was trying to white out on the screen. You know, when I made a mistake. They know, what are you doing? Okay. I told you this many times. I went go to visit an old yid. So he said, I showed him how to use Kol Lashon. And he says he doesn't have nerve to listen to the whole shmuz. So I showed him, you press 6, you fast forward. So then I come back to him, he goes, it doesn't work, you lied to me. It wasn't fast forwarding. I realized he was listening to a live shir, and he was trying to fast forward it. I said, no, you can't fast forward a live shir. I know many of you would like to do that right now, but no. There's a part of life, the Bchochmo Posaiach Shearim, the Rebbeinu Shalom opens up the doors for us. And sometimes we like it, and sometimes we don't, but we're pushed through a door. The next phase of our life begins. And it's only with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's great das that times change. He's the one that's changing times. I can't believe my life is changing so fast. What's happening to the things that were so precious to me? It's the Rebbeinu Shalom who's changing things. And the Sadr Sakaychavim b'Mishmar HaKadosh Baruch Hu is organizing all the stars on their watches. You know what those stars are? That's the Ner B'Tachim that the Altaf and the Vardik was talking about. The Rebbeinu Shalom is repositioning us, pushes away the R for the Chayshech and the Chayshech for the R, because it's Kiritzainai. We're here for a purpose, and life is not stagnant. Life does not stay in one place. It can. The essence of life is moving. The planets move. We're made up of cells that are constantly moving and turning. It can't stop. That's why Chaim Belazhin said, as we've mentioned many times, that there's only one ma'ariv you're going to daven your whole life, one chakras. Where your life is going to be holding and where the world is holding during the next chakras, it never was, it will never be again. The Black Gemara you're going to learn, the Mishnah you're going to learn before you go to sleep tonight, the Kriya Shema Lamita you're going to say, the Nisyanis you have today, you're not going to be the same person yesterday and tomorrow. The people around you aren't the same. The world is constantly turning. And we say, Baruch Ata Hashem Amarav Aravim. And when we daven Marav, we're really saying what the Chavetz Chaim told us, that every single day is a brand new day, it's the only day, and it's the only Black Gemara, we're a Ben Yachid. And there are times in life where we look at our changing life and we say, but I don't know how to handle this new life. I don't know what I'm going to do financially, chas v'shalom. I don't know what I'm going to do emotionally. I don't know how I'm going to change now to a different world. So you know what the next bracha is? Next bracha we say, Chikim u'mishpata, chukim u'mishpata, my son l'marata, ki heim chayenu. You know what the Panovich Rav did? When he saw even he was stuck and he's about to lose everything and he'll never live this down. Okay, goes into the Besmedrash, he opens the Gemara. A lot easier said than done. You go into the Besmedrash and you have your Gemara, you have your Tillim, you have your Chesed. Everyone should have a Seder. We've mentioned this many times. The Chassam Sofer once made a big siyum. What was the big siyum the Chassam Sofer made? He finished Shas. How many times did you finish Shas? No. He had to see him every 5 minutes. He had an extra 5 minutes. He had a Gemara. He had a different Seder Hashas that he learned during those extra 5 minutes. So he made a Siyam Hashas for those 5 minutes. So one of my Rebbeim once did a beautiful Vart. That's amazing. It's gewaldig. What's so amazing? I used every minute. Yeah, that's amazing. But that's not the main Vart. You come home, and you're standing there, you're by a chasana, you're trying to get your wife's attention by the mechitza. Okay, I'm late, we're going. Okay, you'll come, wait for me outside? Yeah, coming right away. And you go outside and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and waiting, and waiting, and waiting, and waiting. Right, a half hour later, I have to say goodbye to him, run back and forth, and then you're about to pull out, and someone blocks you, someone's blocking your car just now. Okay, where are you going? I'll be right back, I will come back. No, you're not going to be right back, I'll be back right now. Those moments in life you're about to explode, about to scream. Instead of exploding and screaming when supper's not ready, you have a little mishnayos. This is my unexpected time mishnayos. Instead of getting angry, instead of getting upset when I don't know what to do and I'm stuck, I have a special seder for that time. That's why that was a very special siyam hashas at that moment. Live in a different world. But I don't know if we can't reach the level of the Chassam Sofer when he opened this Gemara or the Posaiach Shmot, but we can reach the level that we can. Everyone has to have a Seder Hashas. You keep a Tillim in your pocket, a Mishnayos in your pocket, a Mishnah Brewer in your pocket, a Mesos Yisharim in your pocket, whatever. It's for the unexpected time. Instead, don't get mad, start learning. Do what the Posaiach Shmot taught us to do. You know, Rebbe Yashiv, Zechat Tzaddik B'Bracha, I was listening to the hesped from Rav Donner on Rebbe Yashiv, an amazing hesped. It should be mandatory listening, I think, for everybody. So, one of the amazing stories that he says he had Shimish by Rebbe Yashiv many years. Rebbe Yashiv never, when they asked him a Shaila, he never looked into a Sefer. He would rattle off the most remote Rishonim, Baal Peh. And if you came to him trying to explain some Baal Hamor, he would say, no, but the Lashon is different. Right? He never looked into a Sefer. That was an amazing memory. And people would line up with different Shilas, and one person would ask him about a halacha in Hilchas Mamzer, the other person in Pidyon Shvuyim, and the other person in a Shvuya, and then Chanukah, and Shabbos, and what bracha you make a licorice, and what this or that. And he was rattling off the whole Shas, the whole Shulchan Aruch. Everything is just on his mind. You know, Hilchas Kiddush Levana, Hilchas Yevama, Hilchas Gittin, Naguna, and you know, with the mezuzah, which side of the door, and everything right there in front of him. He says he used to go sometimes to a bar mitzvah. He would come and the bar mitzvah would give the pshat and leave right away. So once he came and he smiled. So the grandfather, the bar mitzvah boy, they were old friends. He said to Rabbi Yosef, he said, well, what's the shmeichel? He says, you gedenklich der kasha? You don't remember the kasha the bar mitzvah boy asked? So the 85-year-old grandfather said, I don't remember that kasha, no. He says, you asked that kasha by your bar mitzvah. He says, I remembered. I remember wherever they were. You know, I asked, remember you asking the kasha, right? So as Rav Donner says that before he left Rabbi Yosef, he had to go back. So he says he asked him if he ever have any shilas. He said, write to me. He said, can I call you? So Rabbi Yosef said, doesn't like the phone. Once he starts picking up the phone, what if it's an emergency, you can call me. So he said he did, if you look back, he says it was a Maaseh Yaldus, this was a childish thing. But he said, I asked him, so what's your phone number? So Rabbi Yosef said, 5.
Five, yeah.
That was it. He didn't know his phone number. Actually, he knows his phone number. He doesn't have time for his phone number. He has the whole shas. Well, he's living in a different world. Totally different world. He said that once there was a whole issue and two people were heated up over an argument, a personal vendetta back and forth. And one was even defending his honor. And he said, Nebuch. He said, if your heart is full of Torah, you don't have place for any of this. He said. So, you know, can we be Rabbi Yosef? No, we can't. For the most part. But, and each according to his own level. But for 5 minutes you can be, I don't know if you can be a Rebbe Yashiv, but for 5 minutes you can emulate the Posaiach Shmot. Everyone has to have a sefer you get away with. This is my sefer, I find yourself a place, this is my, I learned. Pick your own sefer, pick whatever. This is my sefer when there's no answers and I have to get away. That's the Ahavas Olam that comes after the Amar V'Ro. We say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, I know you're switching things. I know, Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're machlav as azmanim. You're constantly changing. I don't know if I can deal with the new nisyonis that are coming. But you know what? I have my sefer. I have my chesed. And afterwards, you're ready for Shema. Afterwards, you're ready for Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim. And after that Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim, you're ready for Goal Yisrael. Goal Yisrael is the redemption of Klal Yisrael. And that's where you interrelate your personal issues together with the Geula of Klal Yisrael. And you understand that the personal issues in your life intermingles with the phases of Klal Yisrael. As Klal Yisrael changes from one area to the other. There was a place in Russia, and the Russian government decided to tax vodka. It's like taxing breathing in Russian. So how are they going to know how much? So they made a law that you have a barrel of schnapps in the Kretschmer, in the tavern. They attached a pipe, and there was some kind of hole in the pipe where for every time you filled up a cup, they cheshbon the ratio that it would drip, one drop would drip into the thing. And then they figure out, and when the whole cup fills up, the tax inspector, assuming he didn't have a couple of cups himself, is going to calculate, how much schnapps you took. You can imagine. The only thing that's probably more complicated is the fiscal cliff negotiations, where for every dollar in tax cuts there was going to be, in spending, and it was like something like that. So this guy has two peasants working for him in the Kretschmer, this Yidela. When they saw, what did they see from the whole thing? You could stick a pipe in. So they stuck a bunch of pipes into this thing, and they were taking off. Trumas, Meisters, Chala, Arlo, Bikurim, and all the Chazal and Matnas Konade. So in comes the inspector one day, and he sees 40 different pipes coming out. So he's trying to figure how much vodka did I drink. I only put in one. Right? The story, the guy comes in roaring drunk, and he looks up, and he sees two identical people. He goes, and the bartender says, no. He says, they're identical twins. He goes, all 6 of them? He says, Okay, so he sees now a bunch of these pipes, and he says, you're trying to cheat on the taxes. They grab him, and he says, what? I didn't do it. He says, the peasants did it. The peasants said, yeah, the Jew told us to do it. So all of a sudden it went there. He was already looking at the gulag. What's it called? Siberia. 25 years. His life would be over. He's going to defend himself, and no lawyer even wanted to defend him in the Russian justice system of that time, and under the Tsar. So he went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Marash, I think it was, and he began to cry. And the Marash told him, Ayin Yovay Ezri. When you come to the Madrega of Ayin Yovay Ezri. Didn't know what that meant. He said, your Yeshua is here, but you can only be Zochid through Ayin. He came home, and he heard in the middle of the night shouts, fire, fire, and he went running to see what was happening. And there's a Yid, Yudel, and his whole tavern burnt down. He was left with nothing. He says, I'm finished, I'm ruined. So he went over to him. He says, how much money you need to rebuild? He says, I would need, 10,000 ruble. He says, here's a 10,000 ruble. He says, I'm not taking money from you. He says, why not? He says, you have your own problems. He says, Yudel, what do you have? He says, I have nothing. Me'ayin Yovay Ezri. He hears those words, Me'ayin Yovay Ezri. He says, well, I'm your, here, take the 10,000, nothing to talk about. And then he comes to court, and they put up a case, and the prosecution does what he does, and the judge is banging away, and the peasants are about to rip the kishkas out of him. Finally, the judge looks at him. He says, I want to tell you a story. He says, many years ago, there was a son of a prominent general that was riding on a train, and a man came over to him and said, can I carry your suitcase for you? He said, sure. And he carried the suitcase, and carried the suitcase, and carried the suitcase away. Never came back with it. So the poor kid, he says, this 15-year-old boy was left on the train station alone. He didn't have a red ruble to his name, and he was sleeping on the bench, and he would have to go and, beg for money, and a Yidela came by and said, listen, kid, you're dressed around, what's your problem? He didn't want to answer him. He says, come, let me buy you something to eat. And he bought him something to eat, and he broke down and told him the story. He bought him a ticket, and he bought him some food and an extra sweater, and said, get onto your train and go home to your father. He said, who are you? He says, I'm just someone that says when I see somebody else in pain, you help them out. Mm-hmm. He says, I happen to recognize that person. That's the man who's being charged over here with the thing. And suffice it to say that he believed him, that he wasn't the one who put it in. So what's the Indian in this story? The Rebbe Shem always creates the refuah before the makkah. And we always have enough bricks. But even if we have the refuah before the makkah, that doesn't mean that we can access the refuah. There are difficult situations in life that create nisyonis. And when you pass those nisyonis, me'ayin, from the ayin yavai ezri, comes the ezri that is already within us. There is a refuah, there's an answer to all of our problems, but to access that answer, there has to be a moment of bittul. That moment of bittul can come in the form of mesiras nefesh, of chesed to others. That moment of bittul can come in the form of opening up a Gemara and just saying it's between me and the Rabbi Shalom or Attilah. So as we daven Marav later, what do we say? V'sakanenu v'etza taiva. At this point we realize that there are nisyonis in our life and things change in our life, and we're faced sometimes with hurdles that we don't know how we're going to deal with, and mountains that we don't know how we're going to climb. And we're going to say Rabbi Shalom, and then we're going to have somebody knocking at my door at the wrong time, and I want to say, get out! But v'sakanenu v'etza taiva. I know that the difficulties in my life, Rabbi Shalom, you are sending me because you are repositioning to me how the Chavetz Chaim explained the circle with the Eitz Chaim in the middle. Give me the seichel to be able to reach out. And guard my going out and my coming in from phase to phase to life. For we know that it's an ongoing process. We know that there's never a dull moment. And we know as I interrelate with people, as my life changes in different scenarios, then there's reasons for that. And these are my opportunities to generate Yeshuas and Refuahs that are within me. Rabbi Yankel Golinsky, Zozayin Gesund, he once said over a story, he said there was a certain Rebbe, Rosh Hashiva, I don't know, whoever, Rav. He says he had a wife, she was a big tzaddikus. But here was the problem. He said he came home from davening, she's still in the middle of davening. He said, look, breakfast, neat! You know? He came home from his din Torah, he was like famished, and she's sitting and making shalom between two neighbors. Like lunch, he said, I'm busy! You know? He came home from Mincha, she's saying Tillim and Mamodos, and he comes home from supper, he has big meetings, she's going out to collect tzedakah. So he says, that's pshat, it says Zacha, you know, it says V'nasa lo yezer kenegdoi. It says Zacha nasa lo yezer, lo zacha nasa kenegdoi. He said, lo zacha nasa kenegdoi. She does whatever I do. I daven, she davens, I solve the entire, she solves the entire, but there's no supper, no lunch, no nothing, you know, lo zacha. She's kenegdoi, she does whatever I do. As we interrelate with people in life, and we all have deficiencies in our life, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu puts us together because we're like a puzzle. There are things that we do for each other. These are the me'ayini of the Ezris. These are the opportunities that generate the Yeshua that is within us. So one of the things that Paroi did was avodas perech. What was the avodas perech? That it says he made the men diaper the babies, and the women had to schlep up the huge boulders to the top of the buildings. Right? The men did the ladies' work, and the ladies did the work of men. So, and that's when you feel you're doing what you're not supposed to be doing, that breaks a person totally. But if you believe that this is all the hashgacha, then you can deal with it. Then it's no longer avodas perach. And that's the hashkivenu, v'hamidenu, froiselenu, sukkah shleimecha, that I understand I may not be where I want to be. But I'm going to deal with the reality. And the reality is the Kadosh Baruch Hu that you have done it. You know the story Rabbi Yaakov Golinsky says, this man, peasant, walks into a Beis HaMedrash. He says to the Rosh Hashiva, I want a chassan for my daughter. You want a chassan for your daughter? But not stam a chassan. I want as a chassan to be sedaf tzazan. You want a masmid about? Okay, a masmid about. We got him. He finally says, I'm going to support him. He's not going to have a daig in his life. So he says, you're willing to give too much. Like, what's with your daughter? Anything wrong with your daughter? Nothing wrong with my daughter. So how come you're like willing to give so much? So he says, look, I don't have a daughter. He says. He says, you don't have a daughter. He says, what do you need a chassan for? He goes, because him and the farmer across the street, they're always, I have 10 cows, I have 10 cows, I have a new barn, I have a new barn. No, he just did a shidduch for his daughter. I'm going to bring home a chassan for my daughter also. He goes, what's the chassan going to do? He says, I'm going to support him. He says, but what's he going to do all day? I don't know, I'll put him in the barn with the cows. He says, you know what I mean? We do that in our own way. We take ourselves, we put ourselves in the barn with the cows, because if our only chashivas is at what we are for someone else, then that's where we are. We just, what's there in the cow and the person? The human being, as human beings, we're here. Today's the yard site of the Rambam. Today's the yard site of the Rambam. The Rambam started writing the Parasha Mishnayos when he was 13 years old. And if we don't know much, the history of the Rambam is all sorts of legends and stories. It's hard to discern legend from story, but one thing is for sure, he did not have an easy life, to say the least. And he was sitting and learning, and he had a brother that supported him, and everything was going to be great. Until his brother died in a ship mishap. A ship sunk. And at that point, the Rambam was extremely sad. He writes, he thought that his world came to an end. He lost his parnasa, he lost his brother, he lost everything. And when he was finally able to get out of bed, so he employed himself as a doctor. Until then, he didn't have to, and he said he was from morning till night. Right? Here's the Rambam who learned from morning to night. Now was busy all day with strep throats and measuring people's sugar levels and doing everything else, and insurance papers and everything else doctors do. Right? Because a man wants to say from one of the Rosh Hashiva, he walked in one place and he saw that the guy offered him to eat a meal by him, and he saw that there wasn't enough for everybody. So he said, no, I'm not eating. I said, why not? He said, my doctor doesn't let me eat this. Oh, okay. So he walked out. His Talmud said, your doctor doesn't let you eat it. He says, who's your doctor who doesn't let you eat it? He says, the Rambam. The Rambam says you shouldn't eat from the Suda if there's not enough. He says, the Rambam is my doctor. He said. So we have no musik who the Rambam is. The Rabbi used to say, on the Zayda, the Yismach Moshe once asked Hashem, he wants to have the Yerushalayim of a Malach. They told him, we can't give you the Yerushalayim of a Malach. He wants to have the Yerushalayim of the Abai and Rabbi, impossible. He went down the line until he got to the Rambam. They said, we'll try it. So you can have it for 1 second. And the Yismach Moshe started shaking beyond control. He said, take it away, he was going to die. He couldn't be cycled. And mind you, it's highly doubtful whether we could take the Yerushalayim or the Yismach Moshe. So that we understand who the Rambam is. And the tsaris that the Rambam went through. Once he was the doctor, the king took him as his personal doctor, and then started the ups and the downs. You know, the many legends. So they say that they always tried to make bulbulim against him, and there was a person that came, the king had a son that was blind. And they told the king, the Rambam could really heal your son. He just doesn't want him. And the king was furious. He wanted to kill him. And to prove that, they brought another guy who supposedly was blind. And he went to the Rambam, like nonchalantly. And he said to the Rambam, can you cure me? The Rambam didn't know exactly what was happening. There was a plot, you know, or maybe he did know. And he mixed the potion. The guy smeared it into his eyes. He goes, I can see, I can see, I can see. And the king is furious. You could cure it, you could cure it. He said, Daddy, I'm not cure your son, I can't. He says, he sees they want to kill him. So the Rambam says, like, wait a second. He says, how do you know if this guy's lying? I know he can really see. No, I'm telling you I can see. So he tells him, you were always blind, now you can see. Yeah, he says, what color is this tissue box? Or whatever else he picked up. So the guy says, I can see, it's blue, it's blue. So he says, liar, if you were always blind, how do you know what blue is? Right? So you see that, okay, that's the story that they say. But it gives you an idea of what the Rambam lived his whole life. And then for 10 years he locked himself in a room and he wrote the Mishnah Torah. The Chidah brings in the Sefer Shem Magdal. Esther Shanim lo yotza mea Pesach. He didn't leave his house. Such a see him Sefer Mishnah Torah. B'layla she'ashlimi, on the night that he finished it. Rabbeinu Maimon Aviv, his father Rabbeinu Maimon, came to him with another person, and he asked, who is this other person? And Rabbeinu Maimon said to the Rambam that that's Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Rambam was very frightened. And Moshe Rabbeinu told him, Basi lirois mash sisa. Kishara, when he saw it, Amalai said to him, Yasha Kechach. That's the story that the Chidah brings. So look at the life of the Rambam. One thing is for sure, that it didn't have to, we had enough points in his life we could have said, I can't go on. But when we can't go on means Machlevas as Manimim, Asadar Sakechov, means we have to go on. It means Eka, Asher Eka. Eka, I will try. I don't know how, I'll try. Moshe says, you going to try? Asher Eka, I'll do the rest. I will do the rest. I don't know if you remember this, you mentioned this last time or not, but you know, there was a whole issue with the Sefer Torah. Rabbi Yaakov said that when he came home he got a rov in a certain town, and correct me if I'm saying the story right, and he passed by the city of Slonim, and there were people writing Sefer Torah on Shabbos. And they yelled, one of them even yelled out, Dag, it's Shabbos! And Rabbi Yaakov said to him, how could you write the words Mechalel Mois Yumas on Shabbos? So he thought, oh, you're also from the fanatics. He said, one day you're going to be reading from this Sefer Torah, you're going to see. So there was a big shiloh. A lot of these Sefer Torahs are around town. But, are they good? They're not good? How do you check? So the Rebbe had a cipher. His name was Rabbi Aaron Pollack. He was an unbelievable mumcha. So somebody once picked up one of these Sefer Torah driving down south in a shul. They were closing down the shul. They gave it to him for nothing. So he said, it's one of the most beautiful ksav I ever saw in my life, he said. But I wouldn't make a bracha on the Sefer Torah. I'm not going to tell you to burn it, I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't make a bracha on it. So I heard two versions. One version he said that it's a beautiful ksav, but I noticed that Shem Havai, Yud Kei Vav Kei, is just as nice as the rest of the words. If he was an Erlich HaSofer, when he would write the Yud Kei Vav Kei, there would be some tension in his, it wouldn't be as free. You make a mistake, you can't, not that he sees malachim. You make a mistake, you can't fix it, you have to be more tense. I see he had no problem with erasing the Shem Havai. And the other version I heard is usually by Achnasa Sefer Torah, so we call a bunch of people in to write the last letters. So the last letters are usually a little bit shaky. And here it's all perfect. So that means there was no Achnasa Sefer Torah. I have a shmek, this is not, I wouldn't make a bracha on it. So what does that teach us? It teaches us that when the Shem Havai is shaky and we say, Rabbi Hashem, where are you? What's happening? That makes a kosher Sefer Torah. That means you're a real person with real nisyonis and you're struggling with your emunah. It means we get together with people we're not always happy to be together with. But the Kodesh Baruch Hu put us in, we got to work this out. The letters aren't always as nice. That's the kashrus of a Sefer Torah. That's the beauty of a Sefer Torah. That's Hashem's puzzle. Moshe Rabbeinu turns around and he says, Madua lo yivar asneh. How come the sneh is not burning up? Let's get over with this already. What gives it the power to keep lasting? And then the Rabbi Hashem answers, Ki amokim ashata oimid olav admas kodesh. No, your nisyanis, your difficulties with Hashem Havai, your sveikas and amunah, that's part of your avodah, that's also Hashem. Then Hashem says that's a school when a person has sveikas and amunah. You should say, Rabbi Shalom, everything is exerim and shemayim. This that I have questions in your existence is also your hashgacha. So you're bringing the amunah into your sveikas and amunah. So he says the amunah is not nivgam, the sneh and it will come. So that means the worst Aveiros, they're in the worst matzav, but their munah will always be there. Eker Hashem Eker, says in the Siva Shalom. It is not going to disappear. It is going to continue going. So Parasha Shmot, Klal Yisrael takes a huge lurch downwards. Right, the Sephardim says in Vayechi you have the names of the Einiklach. Here you don't even have the names of the Einiklach anymore. Because only the Ovis maintained their Madreg. Everyone else just fell. It's a time of the year where people fall. We're surrounded by darkness. And we say it's the Rabbi Hashem is doing this. If the Rabbi Hashem is doing this, if you're behind the mask, I can keep going. We have not said this story in a while, so I'm just going to conclude with it. It's brought down in the Sefer Lingel Shabeach. He says there was a man in Eretz Yisrael. He used to go to hospitals and be sick, and he's about to leave. He put in a full day's work. I think he was the chaplain. And the nurse calls him over, and the nurse says, quickly, come. He says, I'm late, come. And he walks into someone's house. He says, who's living in this house? Who's this? Someone's room. And there's a sign on the room, the note by the door, and Yishai Gelis. He says, this man is about to leave this world. So the rabbi walks in. He says to him, you have any relatives? There's nobody standing around him. He goes, no! Oh, so he touched the raw nerve. No children? No! Okay. Doesn't know exactly what to do with him. Then he says to him, like half in and half out of consciousness, I don't know why I say I don't have children, he says. He says, I have one son. You have one son? What's his name? David. Where does he live? In America. They look up, they find his number someplace, and he calls. It's the middle of the night, or in America, and it's busy. Remember, there used to be something called a busy signal on phone. Remember them? Busy signals? You buzz, right. Busy. And meanwhile, the father all of a sudden starts talking, and he's talking, and he's singing this niggin. He goes, Dine Mamen Espeshloish, what are you singing? He says, my son was a masmid. They learned the Schachter and Hedge, and they learned Perik Dinei Momedes. The whole class came to my house every night. He would chazer with them. He would teach it with them. They told me my son is going to be the next big Rosh Yeshiva. He was so proud of him. He was a Ben Yochid. And the father goes on, and then one day, his mother wasn't feeling well, and she was told that she's very sick, and she told the son she has to go to America. And the son was broken, and she said, no, you have to keep learning for me. And he kept learning for his mother, and he kept asking his mother, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? And she said, it's so hard for me to learn if you're not home. Please. She said, I promise you I'm coming home. And she came home, not in the way that he would have liked her to come home. And after the Levaya, he was broken and smashed, and they saw already it was a very cold Kaddish, and he had no interest in the Gemara, he had no interest in the Sefer, he had no interest in anything. And at one point his father came down so hard on him, why'd you stop learning? What's with you on the street on Shabbos with friends? And he started screaming at him, and once his father promised him something, he didn't give it to him. He said, you lied, and mommy lied, everyone lied to me. She said she's coming home, and at one point, they lost connection totally, and he went off to America, and he had a totally different lifestyle than he could have possibly imagined. Anyway, the father is singing the Dinei Momedes B'Shloisha, that sweet tune, and he passes away. As he passes away, this Askim calls, and the guy picks up the phone. He says, listen, is this David Gallis? He says, yeah. He says, yeah. He says, listen, my office is closed now. He says, I don't need your office. I'm sorry to inform you, your father just passed away. He says, we'll try to hold the Levaya if you come right away. So it's about 16, 17 hours later, he shows up. And he says, and he's shaking. He says, when did my father try to call me? He says, called you at that moment. It was busy. He goes, I didn't know it was him on the other end of the line. I wouldn't have been on the phone. He falls to the feet of his father and says, I mean, who you were calling? He goes, in 20 years you didn't call! How was I supposed to know you're on the phone? He started to cry. Cried like he never cried before. He said, what was my father saying before he passed away? He said he was singing Dinei Momedes B'Shloisha. And this David turned white as a ghost. And he repeated the whole story that the father told him, from beginning to end. He said, if only my father would have called me before. If only he would have called me before. None of us should be tested. The Rebbe should send Yeshuas and Refuahs. But every single day there's a moment to call somebody. And we can't afford the discouragement that things aren't going good on that day not to make that call. Because that call is the Eka Asher Eka, the call of Geula and the call of Yeshua.